Well, it's the next day after we started we worked on our bread yesterday. It's the next morning. Typically, we leave it in the fridge to continue to ripen, develop more flavor for about 8 to 12 hours. And well, I set the oven to 500 degrees and let it warm up for 20 degrees with the two-part Dutch ovens in the oven. So that brings them up to 500 degrees, but also really saturates them with heat. That's important. And we're going to drop the heat, and you'll see that in a moment. We'll drop the heat just a little bit, the temperature down to 450 after we've put them in there, and we'll explain a little bit why later on. I use silicone gloves. Our son Tyler was kind enough to give these to us. These actually work better than the big heavy leather gloves. They do a better job of keeping the heat out. Now you notice that I have the pans in here about the middle of the oven. They're going to need to be in the middle, but they need to be high enough that you can, or low enough that you can get some clearance when it's time to remove them. You'll see why that's important later on. So I'll take one at a time, one Dutch oven at a time. There are a couple of ways of doing this. Sometimes people will just plop it in. I'm not a very good shot, so I actually adjust the Dutch oven a little bit when I put that in. Otherwise, it ends up being off center, kind of like it is right now. Now I have a lame, L-A-M-E, a lame, which is French for some terrible weapon that will cut the daylights out of you if you're not careful. And then it's kind of like I'm scoring it with, you try to score it fairly deeply. And I'm scoring it with, it's time to change this blade, but this is the shape that I use. You'll see what that does later on. Excuse me, I need to get my glove. Thanks. Then we put this on carefully. Remember, this is 500 degrees, so be extremely careful. And these are heavy. Set that in there. And then I have this oblong Dutch oven as well. Ruth was super kind to get me a really fancy, nice one that holds larger loaves, but it doesn't hold longer loaves. And so I can't put two of them in the oven. This way I can do 2 loaves at a time. So I'm going to do the same thing, inverting it onto here. That worked pretty nicely. Now what I do with this one, I'll cut the length, but I do it at an angle. You can cut right down the center and let it spread open. You'll see the results later, but I actually like the curling that occurs when you cut it at a 45-degree angle. Wanting to move fairly quickly so we don't lose much heat in these Dutch ovens. 500 degrees falls pretty quickly. Now, put them in there. It's at 500 degrees. Now we're going to change the temperature down to 450. This has the effect of doing the same thing that old-fashioned ovens do, wood-fired ovens do. Start at a higher temperature and then falling temperature, which apparently has some different effect. I made the mistake a couple of times of leaving it 500 degrees, and it actually overcooked it. It made it too hard, too crunchy, not as pleasant. So I definitely would stick with this. Start at 500, bring it down to 450, and we'll see you in 20 minutes.